So you can stay at home. You can rest for sure, girl. That I won't let nothing go down. I want to be your personal manager, baby. I want to do everything I can for you. Yes, I want to be your milkman anymore. Your ice cream man when the day is through.
All right, that is Albert King singing the blues here on the Haunted Cabaret. Personal manager, and we're pretty much singing the blues about law enforcement, incarceration, because you say, okay, where's where's Godzilla, where's King Kong, where's well, this is the home of all things horror, and I'll tell you, when I picked up this book I'm talking about, the new Jim Crow, Michelle Alexander, it made me uneasy. It gave me the creeps. I mean, it really did. I mean, according to this, every citizen in the United States is guilty of something.
Yeah, sure.
All the time.
Yeah.
Now, Tony, as a libertarian, you probably realized this in the forefront of your mind before I did. But
and that's the thing that I've always found so jarring about the war on drugs is that it is not applied equally depending on your... And it's not even about race. It's about socioeconomic status.
You think it's not about race, though?
No, because I think a poor white kid who happens to live on the south side of Providence is in just as much trouble as a poor black kid who lives on the south side of Providence who gets caught with a joint.
Right, but isn't it? Isn't the war on drugs disproportionately about crack and drugs mostly used by the black community? In
in the 80s and 90s it was, and I think now that as budgets become more dependent on that money, they're going for the low-hanging fruit.
Either that, or they've already arrested so many black people that there's apparently there's the population of the incarcerated Americans. The book was written in 2010,
mm-hmm.
and according to the data in that book, from the time of the war on drugs really kicking off under Ronald Reagan to 2010, the prison population in the United States went. I think it was 370,000 prisoners in the United States at the beginning of Ronald Reagan's term, and I think now it's up. As of 2010, it's up to 2 million.
Wow!
So there's 2 million people incarcerated. I think it said 75% of them are on minor drug crimes.
Sure.
There's also, I think there's another. Yeah, and if you can look it up either in the book or Google it or whatever for the exact numbers. But I think she said that there's also somewhere around like 3.5 million more people either on parole, suspended sentences. In other words, they've been through the legal system.
Mm-hmm.
They've been reduced to second-class citizens.
Sure.
No voting rights.
No student loans.
No student loans. No jobs. Because
just here at Rhode Island Free Radio, I mean, we don't have a drug test.
Right. I mean, we will hire criminals. We don't hold that against you. Well, it depends what kind of criminal.
Actually, we prefer that you fail the drug test.
Yeah.
Or study really hard for it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're convicted of, I don't know, is there anything that somebody could be convicted of that we wouldn't hire them if they had the requisite skills?
I don't know. If they're good talkers, we might keep them.
Yeah, if they can talk their way out or whatever. Yeah, make it sound good. Yeah, whatever they did, they can talk their way out of it.
They can sound better than what's on terrestrial radio, then we'll keep them.
That leaves, I don't know, that just lets in the whole criminal population, I think. But yeah, I think, if the land of opportunity is evened out between black and white as far as drug convictions, then yeah, I think that's probably the real reason. I think there's 40 or 50% of young black males under 30 already in prison. So therefore, and the other thing about this mass incarceration is, first of all, they're raising all that money in the war on drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you capture a drug dealer, a suspected drug dealer stuff. You get to keep it and sell it. The other thing is, nobody likes to talk about, and this I didn't know about before I read the book, the thriving, what would you say, labor market in federal prison, state prison. All these prisoners, Donald Trump likes to talk about, putting Americans to, well, a lot of the jobs that blue-collar Americans would be doing haven't gone overseas. They've gone into the nation's prisons. Yeah. Apparently, these prisons sign contracts to do all kinds of blue-collar labor. That would, for what, 5 cents a day, 25 cents a day, whatever it is, 10 cents, some ridiculous amount of money. Well, of course, we don't have blue-collar jobs, for people that, make even minimum wage. Who wants to pay $10 an hour when you can pay this convict, whatever you're paying him? That's the one accurate thing in the movie Gone with the Wind. Just to tie two unlike, vaguely related things together. People ask me, what are your favorite fantasy films? I usually mention things like, okay, well, The New Hope, Star Wars, maybe something like that. And then I mention Gone with the Wind. Because Gone with the Wind is fantasy. I mean, the Salt was never like that. There was never friendly cooperation between slaves and slave owners. It wasn't like that. But the one thing that it did show accurately was, after slavery was ended, the concept of forced prison labor. In other words, they didn't have the slaves to rely on anymore to do all this work that they didn't want to do. So they would hire prison populations, by the warden, by a minor official, and the prison populations would do all this unpleasant labor, for the Southerners that the slaves used to do.
I mean, a great example of that here is an industry that we've both spent some time in as younger men, and that's landscaping. They use a lot of the prisoners for landscaping duties.
Yeah, landscaping duties. Some of them make furniture. I mean, I'm not going to go too much into it now. We only have an hour show here, but it's a wide range of blue-collar occupations.
If only I could get prisoners in here mixing down podcasts, I could loosen up my schedule a little bit.
No, I don't.
I'll chain them to the desk. I mean,
but see, I don't think the powers that be that control this war on drugs, to control this prison slave labor movement, that allow the prisoners to learn those skills that you would teach them.
Yeah.
Because those video skills would result in upward mobility.
Yeah.
They wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, they would not allow that. That's one of the things you don't do, is you don't teach these people in prison anything that's going to let them advance themselves afterwards.
Teach them how to be better criminals.
Right. And if, while they're in prison, they educate themselves, you make sure they don't get any jobs after they get out of prison, because there's that little box in most job applications that say, do you have a record with a prison? What is it exactly does it say? Yeah. But they want to know if you were in prison. And you have to check it, yes. Now, me personally, that right there is some kind of violation of rights, because no matter what crime you do, if you go to prison, right, you serve the time for the crime, you come out, aren't you done?
Right.
In other words, the crime and the prison sentence that you served cancels each other out, right? I mean,
that's the point.
It used to be. Yeah. Theoretically, it is.
You're segregated from the general population, so you can't hurt anybody else, and you pay your supposed debt to society.
Right. And when you come out, it's supposed to be wiped clean.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll wipe it clean. The reason they don't want it wiped clean is because if you have all those strikes against you as a criminal that's been let out the front doors of the prison, you have a lot greater chance of getting yourself sent back to prison.
Right.
If they take away all your legitimate opportunities to earn a living.
You haven't learned any skills in the meantime.
Yeah. It's amazing how, to use a word from the old Bullwinkle and Rocky cartoon show, it's amazing how insidious, this whole process is.
Yeah. And I think, as you talked about, part of that is the fact that your average person who's just trying to have a life and make a living and work 40 hours, or nowadays work 80 hours, and there's no time, there's no mental bandwidth for them to think about this because they're just trying to do their thing.
Right. Let's go back to the music. Let's go back to, we're going to do some Elvis Costello. 2 reasons. One, he just writes some good songs. 2, he's coming to the Providence area.
Right, Tuesday night at PPAC.
Yeah.
Tickets are still available, if you can believe it. I thought that'd be a sure sellout.
Okay. For those 2 reasons, we're going to play 2 Elvis Costellos. I think both of them come from his best album. It's arguable, but in my opinion, his best album is Armed Forces. And, Oliver's Army and Senior Service here on the Haunted Cabaret, Rhode Island Free Radio. All right, so that was 2 from Elvis Costello. I think one of those FM stations would call that a double shot.
Now, I always wondered about Elvis Costello's song Allison, if women named Allison loathe that song as much as I loathe the song Mr. Jones and Me. And just as, I mean, I've known some women that are named Roxanne that absolutely loathe the song Roxanne by the Police. Now, and it's going to be, you know, you hear the same stupid thing over and over again. You must just despise those songs.
You would think. Especially because, let's see, Roxanne is a prostitute.
Right. And just the way I'm sure people sing it all, Roxanne, you know.
Right.
Someone screaming your name.
You can really butcher the song Allison, too, if you're not.
There's no George-related songs, though, huh?
If there is, I'm not telling you.
Just George of the Jungle cartoon theme?
That was enough.
Did you hear that as a kid?
Yes, I did.
Over and over again?
Over and over. Yes.
And the weird thing is that people think they're being clever. Like, they legitimately think they're funny.
They smile.
Or if your name's Molly, you know, good golly, Miss Molly. I mean, people just must be sick of it.
And you're right. They look at you proud.
Yeah. No, they think they're hilarious. And they're the first person to ever come up with it.
Ever.
Are you high? You're not funny.
Right. But as far as Allison, it is a negative portrayal of a woman named Allison.
Right, yeah.
No question about that.
Maybe we should get Allison Hell in here from Dead Girl and
maybe
talk about her perspective.
Counterpoint.
Yeah.
I think we will have to edit a lot of profanity.
I can honestly say I hate the song Mr. Jones at Me. Yeah. And I was in, you know...
I can see you do, because you're going to take the last 10 minutes of the show to explain exactly how much.
I'm like late middle school, starting high school when it came out. And it was a number 1 with a bullet. It was a hot song. And, you know, for a year, all I heard was Mr. Jones and Me. Shut up.
Yeah, no, that was George of the Jungle. That filled the niche as far as I was concerned.
Luckily, that's long forgotten in pop culture history past. Yeah, I mean, until they remake it, only a matter of time before it gets remade, right?
I think they did try to. They did remake George of the Jungle.
Try to not make it racist.
Did they remake George of the Jungle and it just dropped without a trace?
Really? No,
I thought they did.
It could have been such a huge flop that it wasn't even on our radar.
Right, it didn't. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check on that because for some reason I get the feeling that something was done with that character, whether it was a cartoon, a movie, a video, something. The less that's done with it, the better I like it. What I'd like to, before we leave, and time has already fled, so it's almost time to go. I know it. I wanted to mention a couple of, on a more positive note as far as I'm concerned. I read 2 stories that I had heard of and never read before, to give credit to 2 authors. One is Joyce Carol Oates, who I tried reading a couple of her novels that always make it onto the bestseller lists, and I don't know, I thought her writing style is pretentious, and I just, you know, pieces of sentences, a lot of dashes and lines. I don't know.
And that's after it's made it through the editor. Think about that. Think about what the first draft looked like.
Well, other than the coffee stains, I don't think much editing was done. Actually, I think a lot of editing was done to make it look like its final form. Actually, it's not by accident. You know, this is a style. You know, it's just like her pretentious literary style, which I usually can't stomach. But I actually read a horror story by her, and she has written a few horror stories. It's called Nightside, and it's about, well, it's set in the days of the late 19th century when everybody was into spiritualism and seances and things like that, even more than they are now. Now it's coming back.
Yeah, big time. I was at Ocean State Paracon last weekend.
There you go. Yeah. So things that are laid to rest and debunked at the end of one century rise up in the next.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway, so the song was Nightside. The story, not the song. The story was called Nightside, and it was about that subject. I enjoyed it. The other one, I'm really surprised that I never read it before, but it's by an author named Robert W. Chambers, who was a big influence on H.P. Lovecraft, and it's called The King. The book he wrote is called The King in Yellow, the collection of short stories, and this particular story is called The Repairer of Reputations. And I guess I had a hard time getting into it. I tried to read it before, I couldn't get into it, probably because it was written in the late 19th century, and it was a look at the future, but as envisioned in the late 19th century.
Right, yeah.
So there were no...
In the year 2000.
Right. There were no airplanes. There were no computers. he just, whatever was there then, people use trains and shipping.
Yeah.
Whatever was there when he was writing the story, that was going to continue forward. What was prescient, though, is that he envisioned a United States that had become a lot more totalitarian, actually. And he envisioned a United States where illegal immigration was curtailed. Jewish people not born here were expelled. Like I say, a lot of parallels. The most questionable one, I don't know if this is his opinion or if he was just trying to project his own, view of the possibilities, but all the black folks of the United States had been deported, kind of like Hitler did with the Jews.
Right.
So in a way, he foreshadowed what Hitler did in the Holocaust, although not killing them. The original plan was to deport them. Yeah, he had all the black folks in America deported to I think it was an African island, it said in the story. So America was cleansed of a minority, just like Hitler tried to cleanse Germany, 50 years later. So he couldn't envision the airplanes or the computers, but he was pretty prescient in a couple of really negative, horrible subjects that may yet come to pass. So, but anyway, so the story is called "The Repair of Reputations" in Robert W. Chambers' book, "The King in Yellow." It was a big influence on H.P. Lovecraft because Chambers came up with the concept of the forbidden book. Like when Lovecraft came up with the Necronomicon, right. He got the idea from Robert W. Chambers' fictional play, "The King in Yellow," which, when you read it, drives you mad and gives you all kinds of strange ideas. But anyway, good stuff. If anybody's still interested in the written word, pick up a copy of the book, bring it up on your Kindle or wherever you want to.
Buy a real book.
Yeah.
Speaking of Ocean State Paracon, when I was there last weekend, all the self-publishers were out diligently trying to move a few copies of their latest.
Of their schlock. Still, we've talked about that before. Why is do-it-yourself right in terms of, bands and CDs?
It hits close to home. Tony Jones and the Cretan 3 are hailed for putting out on their own some decent releases of both sounding good and looking good enough to be sold in traditional record stores. Yet, if I showed up with my latest self-released book, people would poo-poo on it, almost literally.
I don't know. I think you might have a point there, though, as to the explanation, because there are a lot of self-produced CDs that are really good stuff. Not so much with, now I'm sure there's one floating around somewhere.
Sure, yeah.
Self-published book. I haven't read all of them, or even a great majority of them, but every self-published book I've ever read pretty much sucked. And there was a reason it couldn't
or
find the publisher.
Legitimately had spelling errors and grammatic errors and was not ready for prime time.
Right. The million monkeys typing for a million years. They hadn't typed for a million years yet. Or they relied on spell check.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to write a manuscript that looks like shit, please rely on spell check.
Yeah. And now you can use Grammarly, which I use anytime I'm putting out something on the professional side, which will check your grammar and give you great suggestions on how to improve sentence structure.
Yeah, well, the great suggestions given to me on spell check have included confusing the plurals with the possessives. We don't have to, that rant will have to wait, because that's a rant all in itself. Technological aids to composition. That'll be a whole subject of another show.
I can't believe you gave me lyric sheets. Now I have to go out and learn some new songs before the next Tony Jones and the Cretan 3 practice.
Well, you asked for it.
And you have neat handwriting, so I can't say, I can't read this chicken scratch.
On that note, I'll take a compliment, handwriting or otherwise. All right, let's get out of here with, I think we have time to at least listen to some of one more track.
Surprisingly, we haven't heard much Goat Whore on the Haunted Cabaret lately.
No.
The show staple.
Yeah. What? Just call me unpredictable. Whenever I get too predictable, I become unpredictable.
And we didn't have to hear any Kiss tonight.
That was sabotage. Anyway, okay, here's some Goat Whore closing out this week's show. When Stealing Bone Meat here on the Haunted Cabaret, Rhode Island, Free Radio, nighty night.